strong.
Hi, everybody. This is Funny Minds, all my fans and everybody out there. I am Lynn, your host, and I have my co-host with me, my crazy son.
Haha, Edward Biss, how are you?
And today we are very happy to have on a very interesting man. And it is very strange. You know, CBD, his whole area of expertise is going to be CBD. And we are going to talk to him about that in this episode. And I'm sure everybody's going to be very thrilled. Todd Davis, thank you very much for coming on. Very interesting to hear
Wait.
you have
You
to
started
say.
by saying it's strange. It's not strange.
Yeah, no, it's not.
No,
It's a
it is
strange
very,
trip,
it is
you know,
very
it's
all
a-
day, every day, and it has been for a long time.
It's a dead song. It's a very strange trip. So Todd, I'm going to give you the floor. Hello, how are you? How's everything going?
I'm well, thank you. Yeah, CBD was strange 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Right.
And that's when everything really started to happen in the world of CBD. The government passed the Farmers Hemp Act, and it opened up the door for this new miracle, whatever it was, a molecule, the hemp plant. Nobody really knew what it was unless they had done the science previously. In the world of dispensaries, they knew what CBD was. They didn't know exactly why it worked the way it did, but they knew. They saw people coming in saying, what can I do for this? A bud tender would advise CBD, and people would have some type of relief or some asymptomatic thing where it helped with what they were dealing with.
Right.
So, and I was familiar with it we were installing tracking systems and dispensing systems into the dispensary market, and I would spend a lot of time in these dispensaries while people came through the lines asking a bud tender for medical advice. And I was just, I literally pulled my hair out and I was just going, this isn't good. I understand it. It was being spoken about from a holistic standpoint, but it wasn't good for the average everyday consumer who had some type of medical issue.
Right.
So
Yeah.
when the act came along, that was exciting. It was a chance for people to actually research, publish, experiment, try things. And it opened up the floodgates of a whole bunch of charlatans, or whatever you want to call it, scammers on the internet, where
That's true.
everything had CBD. And I know it didn't because it was too expensive. The first time I bought a kilo of CBD, it was $30,000 a kilo.
Wow.
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 What are you, Pablo Escobar in the studio?
That was Pablo financing.
Really? Oh my God.
A lot
So
of angel
it's
money
insane.
going on there.
We were a public company, so we were able to raise a little bit of money, but it was, there's no way this is going to work, and it was because there were no hemp farms. There was no access. So I bought it from a farm in Poland, and the doctor who ran the farm was a real scientist, a real medical doctor, and she extracted. I learned a lot from speaking with her in the early stages of, how much do you take? How much do you give? Nobody knew.
Yeah.
So the main frame that we looked at it from is I wanted to create a product line using CBD in a way that was still natural, but we wanted to control the dosing. We wanted to find out through anecdotal studies and we did some clinical type studies. We want to know, how do you deliver it? Do you put it in your mouth? Do you swallow it? Do you put it on your skin? Do you put it behind your ear? There was no science defining that. So a lot of science has come out since, and we know that with the CB1 and CB2 receptor sites, they're everywhere in the body. We didn't know there was any in the skin until we found out scientifically that they were in the sebaceous gland, which is in the bottom of each hair follicle. So bodies are built to receive these molecules that come from the cannabis plant. Some of them just use it as a signal, and some of them use it as an intake, where THC will go into the cellular structure, where CBD just kind of drives by and says hello, and it sends a signal. And then that signal communicates with the nervous system and the immune system and all these different systems. So it's a very complex plant, CBD, from what we discovered over time and have been successful doing, is that it's a signaling molecule that's not invasive. that can be used at very low doses as long as it's carried correctly and delivered to the right site. And with that, we've seen anything from, I look at it first, it's an anti-inflammatory.
Right.
So it's not sit there to get rid of swelling. That's not what I'm calling an anti-inflammatory. When your body enters into a state of chronic inflammation, it's stuck. It doesn't know how to get out. It doesn't know how to reset. There's something in the system that's signaling nonstop that you're in pain, you're infected, something's going on that's causing this inflammatory response. CBD, the best way I can describe it is we believe it's intercepting that positive loop pain signal or inflammation signal and restoring a modulated signal, which then helps the body get out of an inflammatory state. And then you get the reduction in pain and you get all these other wonderful benefits that come with it. So it's been 10 years of full observation. We did tests with doctors of various different types. Podiatrist was our first doctor. We wanted to see if it worked with neuropathy.
Okay.
Yeah, that's these days, especially neuropathy.
Right. And, we didn't know. And we're talking about foot pain, something you put in your mouth. Is that going to help?
Okay.
So we tried it. So we tried vaping as a delivery system. We tried oil drops. We tried capsules. We tried all these different things. And no matter what we tried, we varied the dosing in carrier agents, but it reduced pain dramatically in neuropathy patients to the point they were canceling surgeries and procedures, which wasn't good for the doctor, but it was great for the patient.
Right.
Was it via the cream?
The initial success we had was with vape.
With vape, okay.
With a vape. Yeah, but what if you have lung problems and you don't vape? So
I think if you don't inhale, which is difficult to do while you're vaping, but what we really try to do with that in mind is if you don't have good lung health, how do you deliver it? And we saw a lot of vaping problems going on, both in the devices and in the carrier agents. There's certain carrier agents in vape that can really irritate your lungs. And second, we found that there was nickel oxide and tin oxide inside of the vape heating elements from people sucking in heavy metal.
Right.
So
right.
Vape has come a long way technology-wise, but it was still a concern of ours in the early stage. Then we did the oral drops, and anywhere in the mucosal membrane, the mucous membranes, and under the tongue, there's receptors. So it was a very rapid delivery system for just a few milligrams of CBD to cross the blood-brain barrier and cause a cascading event. So that worked. Swallowing it as a pill did not work. It was like a vitamin. You don't get very good absorption. Yeah. We found an enteric delivery system, a delayed release delivery system that didn't release until it was in the small intestine, and boom, it was off the charts beneficial.
Wow.
And in the end, over time, it's my opinion, dual therapy works the best. If you have an oral delivery where it can be absorbed orally and send the brain signal, and second, through the enteric delivery system, which is a secondary signaling delivery system in the body, that gut feeling, that's a real thing. So if you hit both ends of that spectrum, you get the maximum medical benefit. Say that again. Sorry.
I said no pun intended.
No pun intended.
Well, Todd, I'll tell you what, for myself, for THC, I use a tincture under the tongue, so I would think for CBD, that would probably work as well, the same way, like you just mentioned it. And I was always curious about the creams because I see them and I'm like, do they really work? And if they work, what do they work on? How do they,
we tried.
What's the benefit to the creams?
We were about 2 years in, and I started seeing creams pop up. I'm going, well, how do they know where to put it? Why is it receiving? Is it going through the skin? Is it soaking into the subcutaneous level? What is going on? So I saw a very charming booth at a cannabis show in San Diego, and I meet the woman, and I'm looking at her ingredient profile, and I go, what do you think this does? She didn't know all the answers scientifically, but more from a holistic, her family were holistic medicine people for generations. And she says, well, we believe this, we believe this. I'm going, have you ever tried putting CBD in with this mix? She goes, what's that? I go, I'll tell you what, let me buy a couple of these and let me experiment, and I'll call you and let you know what I find out. So I call her up a couple weeks later, and I go, you're not going to believe this, but when I introduced this molecule into your formula, we had spectacular results. And that result was it was killing pain on contact, not wait 30 minutes.
Within topical pain, inner pain, or all pain?
It was external pain, joint pain, and muscle pain.
Okay. Really?
And nerve pain. We would see people that couldn't lift their arms to this height. They couldn't get parallel to the floor. They couldn't get their elbow past a certain point. We would put it on. We would put it on to their neck. We put it where they felt the most pain, and they would move right through the motion.
Wow.
Within seconds.
That's really strange, because we learned that, like stuff like Bengay and all that stuff, it was like something that was topical. It doesn't really penetrate. It doesn't go into, the hand or the elbow or something like that. That's what we learned in school, but of course that was a long time ago. Not that I would suggest that, people use it.
I don't think CBD goes in and absorbs deep in. It's a sebaceous gland. There's an entire paper written about it. That's where that's where these CB2 receptors are at. So anywhere where there's a potential for a hair follicle is a potential. You put the CBD into that area. The signal is received, and then it sends it into the system. There's your miracle. Wow. That is the miracle of that transitory process. So when we didn't know this. We didn't know about the sebaceous gland at the time. We just saw the anecdotal results. And these were mostly people above 50 years old, 50 to 90 years old, had issues, minor pain issues, and it's still our number one seller. Our Maggie's Balm is our number one selling product. It gets rebought. The majority of people buy it 2 to 3 times a year. It lasts a long time. A little goes a long way. We married it with oils and extracts that were complementary to a fat. CBD is a fat. So you have to marry it with things that work well with fats. Then you can get the other benefits of some of the other naturopathic oils that people use for various different things. It's extraordinary. It was extraordinary. When we put the CBD in there, it turbocharged it. And that's
incredible.
It was really
extraordinary breakthrough. And we understood why it was there. We didn't guess. We hoped beginning, and then we figured it out. And now we know how much of a percentage of a formulation. We know there's certain materials you put with that have no benefit. But if you treat it as a fat and you work with other fats and other properties that are similar, you can get extraordinary results.
My daughter, she originally had a medical card because New Jersey at the time was not, you couldn't buy anything. So you had to get a medical card, and she did because she has different problems. And she started with the gummies and did the tincture. And of course, now it doesn't matter because you can buy anything in New Jersey. So we're open. So she doesn't need the medical card. But sometimes it helps her. And other times it doesn't. It depends on the degree, she says, because there's times when she has a really full-blown problem and she's in a lot of pain. She's in bed and nothing helps her. And she doesn't smoke anything and, or vape. She just takes the tincture or the gummies. So, and she is on medication.
With THC or with CBD?
I think it's the CBD. Eddie, do you know? I think it's the CBD.
Marty's all THC, but I think
Marty is THC. Yeah, I think hers is a CBD. Yeah, she doesn't take the THC.
But I think it's different with like serious pain, arthritis, stuff like that. I mean, if it was that much of a miracle painkiller, my God, it would put the pharmaceutical business out of business.
I think from an application standpoint, that's why the dual protocol is good. If you're dealing with a chronic scenario, a chronic situation.
Right, yeah, hers is chronic, yeah.
You should be doing oral and topical. You should be doing both until it's under control. Then you can alternate. And for some people, CBD is necessary every single day. For some people, it's just, I have an issue today, I'm using it, and it's okay, that took care of that. So if you're in a chronic state, though, there's always an underlying injury to the body. It's how your body's responding to that underlying injury. Is chronic inflammation or chronic pain come in. Sometimes you're not even in pain anymore, but your brain doesn't know it. Your nervous system's not communicating properly.
That's true. Yes, that is true.
That's why I think of CBD as more of a signaling pathway, signaling molecule that works differently than a THC molecule does. They are completely different. They're terpenes that are similar to THC, there's terpenes that are similar to CBD. If you're able to use a full hemp profile, there, depending where it grows and the environment that it comes from, you're going to have different terpenes and different benefits or disbenefits depending on the soil that it comes from, the air environment, the water. We tested all that in the early stages, and there are certain strains of hemp that are better than others, primarily because of where they grow.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. It's like anything else. It's like cocoa leaves, coffee, like poppy, anything you grow in the world is better in other places.
It's just use the grape example. Why does wine taste different in all different parts of the world? Because it's pulling from the environment.
Right.
Hemp is identical to that. It pulls everything. So if there's heavy metal in the ground and you have hemp growing there, it's pulling that into the plant. That's not a good source for your CBD.
Right. Yeah. So now at this stage in your company, with everything that you're doing and in the country itself, I mean, now they've opened up so many states to legalize marijuana and stuff like that. So, I mean, you're not like under any kind of restraints with the CBD. It's because it's not the same as the THC. Or are you?
Yes, we are. There's
you
still
are.
Yeah, we have regulatory issues. We were the first company to go into mainstream retail through Walgreens.
Okay.
We were the first.
Wow.
And we spent a lot of time with the FDA label guidelines and attorneys. We did everything we need to, and we helped guide the legal departments of these stores. So most of them were comfortable with the idea of, we want to put this in our store. Is it going to help us sell? Over time, the pushback came from credit card processing. So if Walgreens or CVS or Target or Walmart wanted to use it and they had an underwriter, and the underwriter said, we're going to pull your credit card processing if you don't get this out of here, we're getting threats too.
Really?
So the government put pressure on to mitigate or to actually regulate whether or not CBD could be sold. It came from every direction. So when at that point in time, does the legal department of any major store just throw up their hands and say, this isn't worth the hassle? That happened. On a state-to-state basis, for instance, with Walgreens, I think we only went into 40 states or 38 states because it was a pain with several of the states. Or they would charge such a fee per store to be allowed to do it. It wasn't cost beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, we were carrying over 50% of the total sales at Walgreens, even with 10 other product lines on the shelf through our cream and our balms. You still have to put a product on the shelf that works. So if it doesn't work, they're not going to rebuy it. You get 2.5 inches of space to make your sale. And if they buy it one time and it doesn't work, they're never coming back to that 2.5 inches. They'll go over a couple inches, they'll go down a couple feet, but they never come back to your product. We got into, I think, 7 of the top 10 distributors and retail stores in the nation, and now we're in none of them.
None. It
was post-COVID.
Okay.
When CVS started shutting down stores, Rite Aid started shutting down stores, Walgreens shut down 2,000 stores.
Right.
Target was scared to death. They had all these other political issues going on. Walmart just would never do it. They went out and did a lot of research and investigation, but it wasn't a price point product that they could do yet.
Okay.
So there's all these challenges that exist in the market. Ultimately, I think what's going to happen, in order for this to be a normal market and a highly beneficial market to the public, we have to have the descheduling of the cannabis plant, because it's not just the THC. If it's attached to the plant name cannabis, the species name cannabis, it applies across the entire spectrum of the product line. So every single retail store, every single banking system is at risk until that is not a risk factor. And that's what everybody's waiting for. So now we've had 2 years of stagnancy that, most of the companies, most of our competitors are gone. They're out of business. And there were thousands of new companies that came in.
Right.
It's only 10 to 20 viable.
There's a handful, yeah.
And
so you're directly online. You just sell online.
We're online. We have mom and pop stores across the country.
Oh, you do? Okay.
We lost about 1,200 stores during COVID.
Where are you based out of?
Arizona.
AZ? Okay.
So,
and anything here in the Tampa area? Tampa, Florida?
I'm not sure. I don't know for sure. I don't think so. Not right now. Not mom and pop shops. We had several scattered over Florida. Most of the Florida stores went out of business.
So if I message you privately, you could send me a sample?
Just message me. I'll send you a little sample pack.
Okay. Oh, that's a deal.
So bad.
Actually,
You're so bad at
let me ask you about this, Todd. Seriously,
it's a great
and I am
thing.
going to take you up on that because I'm more THC, but everything that I do, the tincture, I mean, it has CBD included. I mean, it's part of. There's a ratio there, but my interest is in where it's going with pets. Pets has become a big business. I see it across the board. How viable is that? How realistic is it? How serious is it? Or is it all a bunch of garbage?
It can be garbage. Most of it is garbage. We, in early stages, 2015, 2016, we introduced a product called Phytobites. Mm-hmm. That if the dogs would chew on the product, it would get a better delivery system. So we made a product with a peanut butter chew.
Oh, yeah.
And they would chew on it, get some absorption orally, and then swallow it, and in their stomach, they would get additional absorption. Mm-hmm. We saw dogs that were immobile, that couldn't get up, that got up.
that were, you walked in, they were listening to Jimi Hendrix. You were like, what's going on with my dog?
They regain mobility quicker. That was the easiest one for us to observe. One of my favorites, as I went to I do a lot of educational seminars, trying to teach people about this. And I go to this pet store that has Frenchie night. So there were 30 Frenchies there. And if you know Frenchies, they're hyper.
Oh, yeah.
They're making noise. And then you put them in a group of Frenchies and it's a revolution.
I bet.
And we're there and I walked around the room about 20 minutes before the presentation began. And I would ask each owner, would you like to have your dog try one of these? And all but one Frenchie had a treat within 10 minutes before the presentation started. When I started speaking, I go, we're in a room full of Frenchies, aren't we? And they're going, and you know how hyper Frenchies are, right? You remember what they were like when they first got here? I go, now look at them. The majority were just sitting there calm, looking around, making noise. The only one that was hyperactive was the one that didn't take the CBD.
Okay.
Wow.
That right there was enough for people to go, holy crap, I love my dog. I've never seen my dog this relaxed. It's an environmental issue.
Okay.
So we tested it at rescue clinics where a stressed out dog would come in. We would give it to the dog prior to and to see how they would assimilate with the other dogs afterwards. The ones that took CBD assimilated fine. The ones that didn't were aggressive and scared or, whatever their environmental condition was. We tested it on horses and we know the dosing for horse. We saw lame horses that were 30 years old start walking and hopping around and enjoying life again. We saw bones healing faster and stress fractures.
Wow, that's interesting.
Wow.
And it's basically a mammalian product. You give it to a mammal, it's gonna find a benefit.
Sure.
So it's not a hoax. We sell drops to people for their dogs. The chews, I think, are the better delivery system because it forces that absorption oral and then secondary absorption in the stomach. That's the dual delivery when we came up with that.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I seen it for the first time. Honestly, this previous July 4th, we were at beach, the family, and we all have dogs. So we have 3 dogs. We have German Shepherd, a Siberian Husky, and my Cavalier. And they all get along really well, but you're in a rented condo, so your concern is really barking, rambunctiousness, whatever, especially the German Shepherd. And my sister-in-law got some product of CBD for Stryker, and it worked to the tune that I couldn't believe my eyes. Like he just laid in his little bed and he just laid down and he didn't make a peep, but he was totally calm and he was totally cool. All the dogs were simpatico and they always are, but I seen the difference. Like I actually seen it with my own eyes. And I was like, and that's what spurred my mind. And I said, so this stuff really works for them. Wow. Because I know how bad it is for people.
Dogs don't lie.
No, they don't.
They tell you exactly how they feel. If you're the owner, you know every nuance of your pet.
Oh, yeah.
So if they're in a good mood, they're in a bad mood, they're hungry, they're stressed out. You know all these things. And, environmental issues, they hear everything. They react to everything.
Right.
So in the case of the fireworks, we would do promotions ahead of time, say, give this to your dog at least a half hour before the fireworks are starting. Give this to your dog a half hour before you're going on a road trip.
Oh, right.
Yes.
The dogs know your routine. They know something different. and they know. So when you give it to them ahead of time, then they can take that information, they can assimilate better to whatever the stress that normally causes them. It breaks their routine. They're not sedated.
No,
they're not sedated.
Wow.
No, I mean, it makes
that's
total
so
sense.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's very, very interesting.
It makes absolutely total sense. And you mentioned 4th of July. That has to be problem number one.
Oh,
for
yeah,
any
with
dog,
the fireworks.
For any dog
yeah.
owner, is 4th of July.
Yeah, that noise really
traffic.
Is like a killer for dogs. Yeah.
But to do it preemptively
really
so that they just kind of glide into that moment makes a lot of sense.
I have to ask Jamie if they use that for Lucy, because she gets so hyper. I'm sure they.
You know what scares me is my mother would have gave this to me as a 3-year-old for no reason.
And
not you, Barry.
She was like, child CBD, everybody get your cereal.
Sometimes I feel like the guy from My Big Fat Greek Wedding that had the Windex for everything. I'm the CBD guy with the same exact thing. If I could dispense it through a Windex pedal, I would.
Now, are you allowed to sell this throughout the United States, or are there only certain states that you can sell in?
We sell to every single state. I think the one holdout that was out there was South Dakota. And I think I talked to their agricultural department, and they've now accepted that stranglehold. Yeah. So we don't have, initially we had a big influx. Everybody tried it. Most of the brands didn't make any money. A lot of companies went out of business because they over marketed. We tried to stay as conservative as possible. Once we got on shelf, we became the successful company on shelf. There's still strains in the market. The retail market's awful right now. Advertising in the initial phases, we weren't allowed to advertise on the internet. So that was difficult. Yeah, so I did a lot of interviews like this. I did a lot of radio. I did a lot of news channel stuff, especially dogs. They're always looking for a pet segment.
Right.
So I did all those things. That helped get it out there for us. And then it became a referral chain. And then we started looking at the rebuy rates. Do we have a good product or not? Can somebody live without this? Or do they need it to achieve a certain goal each time they run out? And that's what we've seen. Over 10 years, we have significant data and significant observation that we know this is, CBD is never going to go away.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A couple things you guys mentioned, the gummies, the certain ratios. I don't necessarily agree with that scientifically.
Okay.
What we've seen, if you're fighting inflammation first, why are you putting CBD with sugar? That's not the right application. If you're doing it for focus and energy, CBD and sugar is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with it. Sure. If you're fighting a condition, you're trying to normalize
the tincture's the best.
Your homeostasis, don't use sugar. Bitter is better. Sugar is not a good thing when you're using CBD like that. Second,
sugar's just not good at all. Let's be honest.
That's true. Do you do affiliate programs?
We've tried it. We haven't had a lot of success with it. If we found the right groups, we would be happy to do so. But people became lazy influencers is what they became. And none of that promotion really worked. We tried lots of different things, and we had a lot more failures than we had successes.
Okay.
And it really is about, if you're in a group of people, like a group of Frenchies. One of our best ever demonstrations was at a trade show, and you see free samples for everybody. We were at a pet trade show, and we brought our spray-on product for people. And ultimately, this is Mandalay Bay, so you have thousands and thousands of people every day. We had lines, an entire aisle.
Oh, gee.
People.
Wow.
It started off with people that just had tremendous foot pain. So we would take their shoes and socks off. We would spray it on their feet, put their shoes and socks back on, come and see us and let us know. The line just kept getting longer and longer. People were coming for relief. We saw people break pain cycles in a live environment, start bawling because they haven't been without pain in such a long time.
That's incredible.
The human element, the human factor is better than advertising. If I came online and I did a professional commercial about how great our CBD product, it's white noise. But if your grandmother says, I tried this, I haven't felt this good. You watch her walk around better than she had. She gets up easier. Right. She's sleeping better, whatever the case may be. You see that human element, there's the truth.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I agree with
Todd, you mentioned sleep, and that's always a big, besides pets and everything else, that's a big point. What is your take on CBD in realms of sleep? How does that benefit you? What's the best way to go about it if you're trying to focus just on sleep?
I think tincture is the best way to start. Then you'll know if it works first. You'll know if it works for you.
Mm-hmm.
As long as that tincture doesn't have sugar or alcohol in it. Use an oil-based tincture.
Okay.
So you use the tincture. I always like guys with prostate problems. This is the best way to test it. If you're one of those people who get up and down multiple times a night to go pee, and then you can't go back to sleep, that's the easiest thing to count. How many less times did I get up this night after taking CBD? When I tried to go back to sleep, was I able to go back to sleep, or did I have a bout of insomnia? Those are the two measurements we initially tested. And everybody cut down dramatically, both getting up to go pee and being able to fall asleep immediately without disruption in their resting state.
Yeah.
We had people wear watches that measure REM sleep and deep sleep.
Right. Yeah.
Is the technology accurate or not? I don't know. But the ones that did it,
but at least you have something.
REM sleep, it didn't just increase a little bit, it increased an hour. Deep sleep cycles were increasing 2 to 3 hours. So people who were extreme insomniacs that might get 1 or 2 hours of sleep a night were now sleeping 4 to 6 hours normal. People who had tossing and turning and pain at night just from discomfort slept deeper throughout the night. So we developed a couple products. One I always recommend, take the tincture first. The second one is we built another enteric delivery system that delivers anti-inflammatories and CBD with things that counter the effects of caffeine, like L-theanine. So we put those into the formulation where it would have a calming effect and you could sleep a longer period of time. Both of them work fantastic.
Okay.
But that's another area of white noise. People, well, you should put some melatonin in it. No.
That'd be too.
You're treating the same thing with two different molecules, two different applications.
Yeah.
Your body produces plenty of melatonin, but if you can give it enough, relaxation, the body will sleep and the brain will do what it's supposed to do, producing its own melatonin at that point.
Yeah. I've never had success. I mean, I've used over the counter, I've used prescription melatonin, never had any success ever. Only the tincture, and I would love to even try the CBD. You see how that works.
See how that works for you.
Put it in your list.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what I'll do is I'll get your email, Todd, and I'll communicate that way. But
what's new for you, Todd? What are you guys working on now? You have something new that you're working on?
What's the new concoction?
Yeah.
Nothing really. We're not, we thinned the herd a little bit. We
built boner CBD.
Have what?
Like boner CBD
or sex?
Yeah.
Wait, they use stuff to relax things.
That's the point. I go.
Well, you never know. They have THC wine.
I think THC is probably better for that. I think CBD. I tell people this: CBD is a vasodilator. So the way it vasodilates is there's CBD receptors inside the interior wall of your veins and arteries. If you have hypertension in there, you have tense veins, it's going to relax that, allowing blood to flow better. So if you're a consistent user of CBD, it's going to benefit you for that purpose, just to make sure you got blood going.
So it may be just an automatic thing for you. Yeah. You may not have to alter anything. Yeah. Right. I like it.
The joke is, why would you want to put an anti-inflammatory on something that you need to be as big as possible? And we've tried it. We've made massage oils. We've made different things that you could use in a safe environment that didn't have other irritants in it to see if it would work. For me, it's a little bit inconclusive because friction is friction. And, it's more from a scientific standpoint. You want to reduce the inflammation in your circulatory system. That opens up the vasal pathways. That allows for full engorgement. And for older people, they're the ones that notice first. If they're still sexually active and they're able to use a product that creates that element that they can't see. You can't see your veins getting more pliable. But we know this when we tested with this was one of our first indications. When we first tested it with the podiatrist and we were testing for neuropathy, the CBD affected every single doctor was in that patient's care. So if they had hypertension, high blood pressure, migraine headaches, they had multiple different symptoms. Most of these patients were taking 14 to 20 pills a day.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. I can believe
that one little thing changed everything for those patients.
Right.
They stopped taking
Right.
things. Their numbers were different. The podiatrist was getting calls from the cardiologist, from the blood pressure doctor, from the gastrointestinal doctor. It was coming from her because their markers were going down. All of their things were starting to resolve because they were getting rid of the one core thing, the chronic inflammation. So if you're reducing chronic inflammation, a lot of these pills are no longer necessary.
Right.
And it really confused doctors because the patients were reluctant to even tell them, yeah, I'm trying this new CBD stuff. And the doctors are going, what the hell is CBD? There's no medical book to look in.
I didn't go to school for that.
And we can't prescribe it. So the pharmaceutical companies are like, not getting a piece of the action.
Yeah.
Well, it's a tricky thing.
They have plans in the background.
I'm sure. I'm sure they're not going to let anything pass them by.
I'm positive they have their hands in the cookie jar somewhere, but
they're not going to sell you the product at the strength probably it's probably should be used at, because they want to make money. Well, everybody wants to make money. Let's put it that way. This is every kind of business is money.
It's a tricky slope with that. But I don't know. Doctors
I know some of the big. I've seen some of the big pharma plans on product lines, especially in the cream department, we'll call it. Mm-hmm. There are creams out there that are the top selling products where they've spent $1 billion to capture 5 or 10% of the total market. Mm-hmm. They got crushed by CBD, and people stopped buying those products. Now those products, then they took their price points and if it was a $30 product, you can now get it for $9.99.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So they were forced to compete with the market. And as CBD's prices came down to, $500 a kilo versus $30,000 a kilo, then it became a better product set economically for us in the industry to try to lower our prices and get better margins. Mm-hmm. And I always price mine. I always assume this. I built the entire product around a set. If I can build a product at 17 cents a milligram for CBD, I can make money doing this. Mm-hmm. So when the price came below 17 cents, I kept my prices the same. And as my volume increased, I was able to reduce the prices of all the other premium ingredients in the product. And where something was $8 or $10 a unit to manufacture in the beginning, I got it down to $3 over time.
Wow.
Right. And that's good.
By doing that, it allowed us to offer a better product for a lower price point. And that's where we became very successful in mass pharmacy. We were able to hit the price point, that $20 price point that people are willing to pay for if it works. If it doesn't work, that's the end. There's no more.
Right. Exactly.
And that's, we've learned a lot about the market. So it's going to take, there was a big surge of capital and market that came in the beginning. There hasn't been any capital come into this market from investment for 5 years at least. None. And the companies that raise the most amount of money are hurting the most right now because they did it in the form of debt. They all run the risk of going belly up.
Yeah.
So the next round, once you clear this descheduling or rescheduling process of the cannabis plant, now proper investment capital can come in and build quality high-end brands that work, that become mainstays in everybody's house.
Okay.
Why did Vicks Vapor Rub do so well for so long? Because it works for what they needed it for.
Right.
And moms took it and found out 10 different ways to use it.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of different uses for Vicks.
So the same thing is with our products. My mom is one of the greatest. She'll go, I haven't had a migraine or I haven't used Tylenol in years for a headache. I go, why? And she goes, well, I put a little here and a little here and a little back. Why don't you try it? Because that's what moms do. They try these different things and then they talk with their girlfriends. Oh, you use it for that? I didn't know it could do that. If you get one of those core principle type products that is in the market, it gets applied in lots of different ways where you never imagined prior.
Just do me a favor, Todd. Don't get so big and awesome that you sell out to some pharma company and let them buy you out for more money than you'll
That
ever
would have
spend
been-
in your
that would have
lifetime.
been
Please
lovely,
don't
but-
sell out for
Listen,
$200
if
billion.
we would like to see the market not just be at the e-com level right now, the direct to consumer. We want health food places. We want health and wellness stores
Right.
that have these
Yes.
products where they can narrow
Yes.
down their options and say, this is what we use for this. We've tried
Right.
all the other stuff. This is what works for this. You want to put some expertise back into the mom and pop, that human contact. I have doctors all over the country that use the product in-house. They said, Todd, can we charge more? I go, you can, but we've designed it to do this. They want to be able to sell it for more expensive because it's so effective.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
we might, over time, the first round of business exercise is over. When I say we're not inventing anything new, we're taking the things that work really well and we're trying to get them even more perfected.
Okay.
So in the pet lines, we know it works for pet. In the skin, we know it works for skin. We've made men's grooming lines. We've made different price point pieces. And all of them work. You just got to get it narrowed down so people can make a choice between either or both. They can pick one or the other. Either one will work. And if they use both together, they get a better result.
Okay.
And that's what we're trying to narrow down into. So it's a much more efficient business model and less confusion for the consumer. The consumer's going, what is going on? I see this stuff everywhere.
I know. What should I pick? What do I?
And it doesn't work.
Yeah.
When it doesn't work, now that person, are they going to go out and spend another $100, another $50? No,
No.
It didn't work.
No.
If
Yeah.
they get our product first, now you've got a customer for life.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
they have a valued
Yes.
product, then you're right. You are going to have a customer for life. 'Cause it's something
100%. I mean, you
yeah,
have you
it's
have
not the
pretty
quantity,
much
it's the quality.
all to offer.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean,
And use
you
the
pretty
best
much
ingredients.
covered your corners.
Yeah.
If you buy, as a company, when we first came into the medical marijuana business, we created a tracking and compliance platform.
Mhm.
We knew that compliance was going to be ultimately the biggest thing in the industry. It was the
Yeah.
one thing that didn't exist.
Yeah.
There was nothing to comply to. There were
Right.
no self-regulations. People were trying to say, I'm at 30%, I'm at 15%, I'm at 20%. Everything was bigger, 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 bigger.
Yeah.
In natural molecules, if you need a lot of it, it's not really working.
Right.
If you need a very small dose, a very micro dose that can control, and it works, it's the best thing you could ever use. Because
Mhm.
your body ultimately isn't going to get immune to it or reject it in the future. Give it just enough, the body knows what to do with it to be efficient. It's a hard business model.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to do that. It's always easy to say new and improved, extra strength, all these different things. There's a certain range where it becomes no longer beneficial to the body.
Yeah. Once you hit Superman level, it's like, what do you do past that?
Yeah, exactly.
You
Triple
go to
Superman level. You're like, okay.
In the world of natural molecules, I think that's why, that's one of the reasons Big Pharma hates it, because Big Pharma needs to be able to push it to the max. They need the highest possible dose before people get really sick and start dying.
Yeah.
Well,
They
yeah,
want to
you're
sell
right.
the most amount they can
Yes.
with the least amount of damage.
Mm-hmm.
In phytochemicals, in plant-based derivatives, you need to be within a range, a very precise range. Heavy metal's not bad for you in all cases, but if you have too much, it's going to cause some serious problems.
Yeah.
So you have to be within these ranges of dosing for any product that's natural based. Once you find that range and that dosing deviation, then you're in the right spot. That's what we concentrated on. And I think that's ultimately why our products ultimately came out better and better and better. And we had an entire fleet of products. It was just too many. We were trying to make everybody happy instead of the real consumer.
Everything good in moderation, as they always
Absolutely. So tell all our fans and the people that are watching where they can find you.
Just go to cbdunlimited.com.
say.
Okay.
Nice.
You can
and
call our
simple.
number. You can call our number. We don't have a full staff, but we have a couple people who will call you back if you have questions. So 480-999-0097 is our dial-in number.
Okay.
We have people that can help you and answer your questions, especially for older people. They don't know how to use the internet, or it's confusing to them. It's a great place for elderly to call in and get their hand held and get educated
Right.
a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And be talked to in a way that says, well, here's how I use it. Here's what we've heard works well. So there's that approach. online, if you go to cbdunlimited.com, you can find our pet products. You can find our full array of products there. That's the best place to go and just look around. Some of the inventory is low or down, and we're cutting out all the different sizes. We're just starting to narrow it down to sizes and quantities, because we now know what people are looking for. So we've changed some of the dynamics there, but and you can go look for Todd Davis and CBD Unlimited. Go on YouTube and just do a search for Todd Davis, CBD Unlimited. All those educational platforms that I've done, they're all there. So you can listen to me talk 10 years ago, and you can listen to this call today.
And we can compare it to today.
It's very consistent. You can see the development over time. Really testing it was when I would go out and meet with doctors and do a presentation in front of their patients, or to a medical clinic that was having their spring festival. Or when I went out there and I would work with a live crowd, I would give them a free sample while we're sitting there. And I would see people sitting there in uncomfortable positions to being relaxed. I go, when you all came in here, you were fidgeting, you were moving around a lot. Now you're all relaxed. And they're looking at each other. That's the human factor. Men are the worst at describing pain and results.
Oh, true.
Oh, now it doesn't.
Very true.
They don't know the difference. They don't have to describe it. A woman will go off in lots of different tangential things where you're going, what? I had no idea that was doing this.
I know, right?
And so having all that feedback and understanding it over time and seeing it repeat itself, I just, my hope and my fear all at the same time is CBD should always be a part of the vernacular. The public got burnt out on it. And it's too bad, but that was stage one. Something miraculous that everybody wanted to be a part of it has now condensed down to there are some experts in the field. There are doctors who know what's going on. There are specialists that have done the proper research. Published, collegiate studies that were trapped inside the college are starting to find their way to the surface now, because it's going to be legal to publish real science.
Oh, yes, it is. Yeah.
It's changing, and once this descheduling ruling comes out, when they get back on track with that, it's going to be a dynamic that changes, I think, healthcare and wellness.
It's going to be, a whole new world.
It is point. Really. And
you definitely gave us a master class.
Really.
For all the fans and listeners today, I mean, this is a special episode because I know there's a lot of listeners that are very interested in this.
Yes.
And you
they're
more
not
than answered
enough.
every possible question and covered every base on this call that you possibly can in this realm. It was well done.
And you've given them the information. If they need to know more, they're going to come to you. They're going to call you. They're going to go on your website. They might not get you personally, but, they'll get somebody in your company and, they can ask away and get further information.
Of course, they're not getting Todd on the phone. Are you kidding me?
Sometimes.
Come on.
One of my favorite stories of all time is this. And if we're coming towards an end, this is a great way to do it.
Okay.
I get a phone call from a doctor in Nebraska. And he goes, Todd, this is Dr. Rick. And he goes, does this really work or is it in your head? And I said, yes to both. And he goes, what? I go, yes, it's in your head. There are receptors in your head that the molecule communicates with. And I go, all I can do is I said, I don't know what type of doctor you are. And I go, here's what I would recommend you start with. And he didn't tell me what the condition was. So this is August, I think. And I see him order online. We send him out a product. I get a call the day before Thanksgiving. And I gave everybody the day off. And my wife was in the back and she gets the phone's ringing over and over and over. I go, could you answer that real quick? And I hear, yes, yeah, And then I hear my wife sniffling and crying. And she goes, you need to tell my husband. Here's Todd. So the doctor had a wife, and the wife had a serious fall where she had a head injury a few years before. And she was despondent. She was poor quality of life. She never got out of bed. She was depressed. She went through all these different things that were just the awful story. He took the product. He gave her exactly the drops I told her. He said, honey, take these 6 drops. I'll be back in a few hours. 6 hours later, he goes back and he does it again. The woman who's now telling the story to my wife. And the story goes something like this. She goes, I took it and a few minutes later, I got up and I took a shower. And then he came back and he gave me the other one. I took it and he went back to work. And I got dressed, put makeup on, and went to the grocery store. And I was grocery shopping. All sounds normal, right? She starts bawling in the middle of the store. She hadn't been to the grocery store in months, even a year.
Wow.
All these things normally. She put on makeup. She got dressed. She took a shower. She got in a vehicle. She drove to a store. She did that. She was clinically depressed. She was so far gone. She goes, I do it immediately. She goes, I didn't think about it. And when I realized what happened, I just started crying.
Wow.
That's a story.
That's a wonderful story. I love that story.
And I still, we became friends with them and we understood and all these different things. And they started helping people that were having the same issues. Then they advocated in the state of Nebraska. The governor was an ass. He didn't want anything to do with it. New governor comes along. They've made tremendous progress. So, it's just pebbles in the water. It's got a ripple effect in all these communities around the country. And a story like that, as simple as it sounds, is the extraordinary part of all this. Yeah. And I still get choked up when I talk about it. It's been an extraordinary adventure. I'll tell you that.
And that's great. And it makes you feel really good because you're the person behind it, which makes it even more important for you.
Yes. It's tremendously satisfying. And I've seen a lot of things in my 35 years as a professional. Started off on Wall Street. I was a specialist in biotech firms, and everybody talked a big game about all these things that they believed it could do. Those things 30 years later are real now.
Right. Yeah.
And it is changing the market. The same thing with plant-based medicines and plant-based applications. All these people that were kind of kooky and crazy and trying it, they knew something was going on. They may not have understood it necessarily, but they were confident that this is something that needs to happen.
Right.
Now it's becoming scientific. It's becoming where you can commercially apply this and affect an entire population. So for
it's weird, Todd,
that we've gone through, it's just fun to see.
And I'm sure you agree, Todd, that it's weird that for so many years people talked about things like ancient Chinese this and herbs, and you go to Mexico and they chop off trees and they do this and do that, and holistic. You got to realize these civilizations have been doing this for way longer than imaginable. And there has to be a reason that they were able to make it through. So there are so many viable ways to do things that exist that just, I think, get pushed down because that's not a moneymaker.
It's true. You take every culture from around the world, from an anthropologist standpoint, every person that was a hunter-gatherer tried everything. They tasted it. They experienced it. Sometimes it was lethal. People die from this stuff. And
that's how you found out.
We better not do that. Let's try this.
You didn't wake up, you knew you did.
So, it was all trial and error. And they didn't know what they was doing. They go, well, this leaf that looks like this can do this thing. And then a leaf that looked very similar was lethal.
Right.
So they really had to keep track of everything. How did they keep track of it? How did they know? How did they store that information? The problem is, we don't truly have access to all that information. There are some texts that are out there that documented it, but it's just reliving it, rediscovering in a way that can be replicated now. And safety still is number one.
Of course, always.
Does THC kill anybody? No. But if you take too much, you're out you could be out for a couple days.
Yeah,
I've had some bad experiences there too. So it's not
too much of anything.
It's not without risk.
That's true. But I have to say, I really appreciate the fact that you came on today, and it really educated us a lot. And I'm sure when this episode is really going to be a bang up when it goes out, because there's so many people that have been waiting to hear stuff like this. And, we get a lot of different emails about different subjects that they would like to hear. And this is one of the major subjects. And you are like the one person that we really wanted to have on. And I'm very lucky that we were able to get to you and you were able to come on. And the craziness with Zoom today was one thing, but thank God you came on and you were part of the show, and I really appreciate it. And it's just wonderful to have heard everything that you had to say and how knowledgeable you are and the things that you've done and for such a long time. And now so much is coming to fruition for you. And I'm very happy, and that's great. I'm very happy that you came on.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. And, it's been a while since I've actually done a show. There hasn't been a lot of interest in this. I would say the last 2 years, it's been very turbulent out there in the world of wellness because it was such a big surge.
I'm so shocked to hear that.
And then after COVID, it was like crickets everywhere.
Yeah, but that's the best time ever to get into wellness after COVID.
I know.
I mean, that catapulted me into doing things I never did before. It's mind blowing. But you did such a bang up, amazing, informative, enlightening. There's no one that's walking away from this.
Oh no! I know.
We're gonna have to give you. Honestly, we're gonna have to wait. If you have time, we're gonna have to catch up to you periodically throughout and catch up on what's going on.
If you have specific topics you want to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, and we get feedback. We get real-time feedback and stuff.
A lot of feedback. So,
and I will be emailing you.
You will. You will hear from him. Okay, my fans, my loves, my adorable ones. We have to say goodbye. And if you go online to our website, you will see there's 2 organizations that we really like to promote, and that is St. Jude's Children's Hospital and Breast Cancer. So there's a big purple button. And if you care to donate, you can do that. Also, we have our Beacons AI, and you can go on there. We do a lot of things, and we are 420 friendly. So we do have CBD on there in one of the applications that we sell. And so you can go on there and you can take a look. And as always, I tell you all that I love you. I appreciate you. And I want you to laugh, because we all know that laughter is the best medicine. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye to you, Todd, to you, Edward. I will talk to you again, and to our fans. And we love you.
Todd, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Be well.